Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the Sewing Room channel, and this is your tip of the week. A viewer asked me, about a month or so ago about rulers and keeping your rulers stable while you're using them. So I'm going to go over the different ones that I use. So here is a ruler that some people use to cut long strips of fabric or their squares. I don't like the ruler to use with a rotary cutter. It's not heavy enough, and while you are cutting with that rotary cutter, it has a tendency to wave because it's not very heavy. I mostly use this ruler for maybe just measuring things. I don't use it very often for cutting. So the ruler I recommend for using your rotary cutter, especially for doing long strips, is this ruler. They come in a 6.5 inch width and an 8.5 inch width. I started out with the 6.5 and it was pretty good. But when I went to the 8.5, it was even better because it's much heavier. So one of the problems that people have, of course, is still the waviness. You can still even have it with this. It's not as bad. So if I'm cutting really long strips, sometimes I will put a weight on the end. There are those handles that you can buy that have suction cups on them. You put that on. That was a waste of money for me because it still moved all over the place. It didn't help at all. Then I tried those little sticky dots you put under your ruler. That didn't help either. So this is what I found. When you're first starting to cut, put your hand down here. I'm left-handed, so you would do just the opposite. So here's your rotary cutter. I'm coming along. When I get towards the end of my fingers, I stop, lift my hand, move it to the center, then cut. Lift my hand and move it down towards the end and cut. And I rarely ever have that issue of waving. Another viewer asked me, how do I get all my quilting blocks to be the same size? How come some come out smaller, some come out bigger, some come out just right? And it's because for a variety of reasons. Maybe you didn't cut your squares all exactly the same size. One could have been cut, let's say 9 7/8. Another one could have been cut 10 1/8 or 10 1/4. Whenever they're just slightly off, things are not going to come together. When you get all your squares together, the quilt is going to pucker all over the place and you're going to wonder, what did I do wrong? Well, when you're stitching your seams, if your squares have already not been cut right and your seams are not all exactly the same, and in quilting we recommend you use a 1/4 inch wide seam, that can still throw it off. So what I do after I've made my blocks, let's say I did a 4 patch where I have 4 different squares. I stitched them together, but the edges aren't very straight. So you would take a square ruler. This is a 12.5 inch square ruler, and I recommend this for all people just getting into quilting. So that wide ruler we talked about and this one is a must. So every time you finish a block, you put your ruler on top and check around to see if it's the same size that it should be. If not, then you have some decisions to make, whether you're going to cut one up, remake it, whatever you want to do. So I have a tutorial I'm going to refer you to show you the complete process I go through when trying to get all my blocks the same size. And the links, I have many links down below for you to look at that will help you with some of these problems with cutting and making squares for a quilt. This is a garden flag that I do have a tutorial on it. So if you're interested in making a garden flag, there will be a link below. But I want you to focus on the lettering. So an embroidery machine does beautiful lettering. But not everybody has an embroidery machine. So I'm going to show you another way of doing lettering. This is a tote bag I made a few years ago, and I take it sometimes with me when I'm going to do fabric shopping. But I want you to look at the lettering on it. What I did was I photocopied already printed letters, whether it was in a magazine or a newspaper, whatever, printed those letters out and used the letters that I like the best and used them as my pattern for making my own letters. So on this one, I used a different piece of scrap fabric for each one. Now there's a process you want to go through by getting them all lined up. Now I've got another one, another tutorial in which you can learn to do the really squiggly script style printing where you can do someone's name in really pretty lettering. So there again, if you have a photocopy or printer, you just copy those letters. Sometimes you can find letter templates where you can also trace the letters. So the links for doing this will be listed below your YouTube screen in the description section. This is a rag quilt. This is a baby size, like for newborn. It's relatively small. But I recommend when you want to get started in quilting that you try rag quilting first. It'll introduce you to how to cut your squares and how to stitch them together. So in rag quilting, you have multiple layers of fabric. No cotton batting is in it. And you stitch them together. The difference between stitching squares in a regular quilt and in rag quilting, that in rag quilting, the back side of the fabric pieces, the squares, are brought together. And then you stitch on the outside fabric, so it's completely reversed. And you want to use fabrics that unravel easily. Flannel does, quilting fabric does. Your seams are usually wider, and it depends on the width, really depends on the person making it, the look that they like. I believe mine were 1/2 inch size. Then when you've got them all stitched together, you have to go along and clip little clips in the seams and on the outer edges. The problem is that when you use your scissors, you wear your scissors out really fast. So what I do, these are rag quilting shears. They're made by Fiskars, and they have a little lock on it. You really want to keep these out of reach of everybody in the family because they're really dangerous. They're very sharp, and they're meant for doing rag quilting. It's so much easier. They'll go through multiple layers of fabric. Now, not only is my right hand weak, but so is my left hand. So I have a wonderful solution for my problem is I put on a good movie, a big cup of coffee, sit my husband down, and have him do the cutting. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tip of the week and that you learned something new. I hope I've inspired you to try new projects. Remember, everything that I talked about in this tutorial, there will be links listed below your YouTube screen that you can go and get even more in-depth information on how to do these different things. I'll also have links to other beginners' sewing projects. Now, while you're down there looking in the description section, which is below your YouTube screen, you scroll down, click on Show More, and it will expand open. But I also want to remind you, make sure you follow me on Instagram and check out my Facebook page. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing. If you like the Sewing Room channel, one of the best ways to show your support is to subscribe by clicking on that red subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. And make sure you click on the bell so you receive notifications for all my new videos. I'm Cheryl, this is Manny, and this is Scotty. See you next time.